The Whispering Trail. At first, it was just a voice in the wind. Ryan almost laughed when he heard his name drifting through the darkness, soft, broken, like the trees themselves were trying to speak. But when the second voice came closer, clearer, and repeating his name exactly the way his mother did, he stopped laughing. He wasn't supposed to hear anything out here, not in these woods, not at this hour. He'd started his hike late, too late, but he'd promised himself he could handle it. He'd done tougher trails before, the Rockies, parts of the Appalachians, even a night descent once. But this forest, the locals called it the Whispering Pines, had a strange feeling to it. No birds, no insects. The air felt padded and muffled, like sound itself was being swallowed. His phone had lost service an hour ago. No signal, no bars. The GPS app froze and glitched, the map warping into jagged lines before the screen finally went black. The battery icon said 62%, but the phone might as well have been a rock. He tightened the straps on his backpack and kept walking, telling himself the trail would loop back. That's what the guy at the gas station said. It's a loop. You can't get lost. Except the trail markers had stopped appearing. No blazes on trees. No little wooden posts. Just dark trunks stretching in every direction. Then the temperature dropped, not slowly. One step he was sweating. The next his breath came out in pale clouds. His skin prickled under his jacket. Somewhere behind him, a branch snapped. He swung his flashlight around. "Hello?" he called. "Anyone out there?" Nothing. Just his light catching fog, swirling low around the roots like it didn't want to rise. He turned back to the faint path. That's when he saw it. Someone standing down the trail, just at the edge of his beam. Still, facing him. Ryan felt his chest loosen with relief. "Hey, you lost too?" He shouted. The figure didn't respond, didn't move. It was like it had been placed there. He raised his light higher, but the beam seemed to bend around the figure, as if the darkness was thicker around it. Then, with slow, deliberate steps, the person turned and walked deeper into the woods, away from the faint trail. "Wait!" Ryan shouted. "Hey, hold up!" The crunch of his own boots on dead leaves sounded too loud in the quiet. He followed, because what else could he do? A ranger, another hiker, someone who knew the route any human presence was better than being alone with the silence. As he walked, he realized something. He could hear the footsteps ahead of him, but they were out of sync with the movement he saw. Sometimes the figure's feet touched the ground, but there was no sound. Sometimes he heard crunching leaves when it wasn't stepping at all. The trees grew closer together. Their branches seemed to lean in. Some trunks twisted at odd angles, and the bark peeled away in shapes that looked almost like faces, long, stretched mouths, empty eyes. He kept telling himself it was just his imagination, just shadows. Then the whispers started. At first, it was just his name, sliding between the trees. Ryan, soft, drawn out. Then another word he couldn't catch. Then his name again, closer. He stopped. "Okay, that's not funny." He shouted. His voice fell dead about 10 feet out, like the forest was pushing the sound back at him. The figure ahead of him halted too, as if it had been waiting for him to speak. Slowly it turned. Ryan's light finally caught its face. Its skin was pale, stretched too tight over the bones, like it had been drained of color and left to dry. The eyes were wrong. They were dark all the way through, like two wet holes in the ground. Its mouth curved into a crooked, almost relieved smile. "Who are you?" Ryan demanded, his throat dry. The figure didn't move its lips, but a voice came anyway everywhere at once. In the branches, in the wind, under his feet. "You're almost home," it whispered. The air felt heavier. Ryan's legs wobbled. He stumbled backward, his boot plunging into something that wasn't solid ground. The earth under him sagged, and suddenly he was sinking, the soil turning cold and wet around his ankle. He threw himself forward, hands clawing at moss and roots. Something beneath the surface squeezed his leg fingers, long and icy, wrapping around his calf. He screamed, the sound strangled as he sank deeper, dirt filling his shoes, pressing against his knees. His flashlight slipped from his hand, rolled, and stopped with the beam pointing at him. He saw his own face, wild with terror, reflected in its glass. Behind the light, the pale figure stood at the edge of the hole, head tilted, watching him struggle with an almost curious expression. "Help me," Ryan gasped. "Please." The whispers rose, layers on layers of voices, all overlapping. Some sounded like him, some like strangers. One sounded exactly like his mother. "Stay," they hissed. "Don't leave us alone." The cold climbed his legs, crushing and numb. He kicked, felt his boot brush against something that moved. It squeezed tighter. The soil reached his waist, his chest. He could taste dirt in his mouth, bitter and coppery. "Stop, please. I don't want to die out here." The pale figure leaned down, bringing its face close to his. In the flashlight's beam, he saw that its skin wasn't just pale, it was streaked with faint lines, like roots or veins branching under the surface. Its eyes were not just dark. Something shifted inside them, swirling slowly, like ash in water. "You aren't dying," an everywhere voice whispered. "You're joining." The ground surged up and swallowed his scream. Silence. The flashlight lay on its side, its beam now catching only drifting fog and the trunks of the trees. After a moment, the figure bent down, picked up the light, and switched it off. Darkness folded back into place. Days later, the search teams came. They found his car at the edge of the trailhead, frost on the windows even though the day was mild. His boots were not in the car. His extra batteries sat unopened in his pack. The ranger noted that the trail markers hadn't been replaced in years, yet somehow they were freshly scratched, as if someone had been tearing at them with bare hands. They spread out through the woods in rows, calling his name, blowing whistles, marking trees with bright tape. Radios crackled. The dog handlers brought in German shepherds, letting them sniff his jacket. The dogs refused to enter the deeper part of the forest. Hackles raised, teeth bared, they whined and pulled back, nails digging trenches in the dirt. One dog howled, a long broken sound, then sat down and refused to move at all. Its handler swore. He felt the ground vibrating under his boots, like something was quietly moving below the surface. 3 days passed. No tracks. No dropped gear. No sign of a campsite. It was like Ryan had stepped off the trail and simply stopped existing. On the 4th day, a volunteer found his phone. It lay face down beside an old stump, miles from where he'd planned to hike. The battery was dead, but the last thing it had done was record. An audio file, over an hour long. Curious, one of the search team members charged it at the ranger station and hit play. At first, it was just his footsteps and the sound of leaves, his breathing starting calm and getting gradually more ragged. Then his voice. "Hello? Is someone there?" A few minutes later, he said, "That's not funny. Come on, man." His tone shifted from annoyed to afraid. Then there were the whispers. Dozens of them, too many to be one person. Some were right against the microphone. Some far off, like they were coming from deep underground. They said his name over and over, stretching it, twisting it. At one point, there was a voice that sounded like his own, saying, "This way," even though he never remembered saying that to anyone. Near the end of the recording, he screamed once, just once. Short, cut off, then nothing for a long stretch except static and a faint rhythmic sound. When they amplified it later, it sounded disturbingly like something scratching at wood, or the inside of a coffin. No one played the recording aloud at night after that. The official report said he was presumed dead, likely due to exposure or accidental injury. But the locals, the ones who knew those woods before there were apps and GPS and tourists, they didn't buy that. They remembered other stories. The hunter who went out one autumn and never came back, only his rifle was found, propped neatly against a tree. The missing kid from decades ago, whose sneakers turned up hanging high in a branch where no kid could climb. The couple who swore they heard a baby crying deep in the forest at midnight, even though there were no houses for miles. They started calling that route something else, not just the Whispering Pines. They called it the Trail That Answers, because people started testing it. Teenagers, mostly. Late at night, they'd drive out to the trailhead with flashlights and cheap beer, daring each other to go a little further in. They had their rules. You had to go alone. You had to stand still, turn off your light, and wait until your eyes adjusted. Then you had to say your full name out loud 3 times. Most of the time, nothing happened. Just wind. Just leaves. Just silence stretching too long until nerves gave way, and they ran back laughing, pretending they weren't shaken. But sometimes the woods answered. Not as an echo, not delayed. The voice would come back layered over theirs, speaking at the same time, matching every word, but slightly wrong. Just off enough to make their skin crawl, like something was copying them and hadn't practiced enough. Every once in a while, someone came back pale and shaking, insisting they'd heard someone they knew calling to them deeper in the woods. A brother, a best friend, someone who was alive, but not there. The sound came from the dark, calm and familiar, asking them to come help, saying they were hurt, saying, "It's just a little further. Almost home." One girl swore she heard her own voice begging for help from somewhere out where her flashlight couldn't reach. She left town a week later and never stepped into a forest again. As for Ryan, no one ever found him. No body, no clothes, no gear. But sometimes hikers swear that when they walk the trail at dusk, they see a shape between the trees, moving just ahead of them. A lone hiker in a jacket like his, backpack slung over one shoulder, walking just out of range of any light. If they call out, he doesn't answer. If they hurry to catch up, he always turns down a side path that wasn't there a moment before. And if they follow that path, the woods grow very, very quiet. So if you ever find yourself in a forest where the air feels too still, where the trail markers disappear, and you get that prickling sense that the trees are listening, do yourself a favor. Don't call your own name. Don't answer any voice that sounds too familiar. And if you see a lone hiker just ahead of you, walking deeper into the dark, let him go. Because out there on the Whispering Trail, the lost are never really gone. They're just waiting for someone to walk far enough in, so they don't have to whisper alone anymore.